Now, have you ever questioned why you believe in God, or if you don't, whether or not you're missing out? Well, a psychologist from the University of Lincoln has come up with a series of spiritual experiments to test the beliefs of both atheists and avid churchgoers. Dr. Roger Bretherton, who's a senior lecturer, has re-examined the teachings of Jesus for a new book, and is with me now to sort of explain a little bit more about this. So, Roger, what did you want to find out? What sort of set you off on this trail?
Yeah, well, it's been an interesting journey for me. So I've been writing it for about 10 years, really. So I've been thinking about it for a long time. And I think primarily it came for me from a kind of, well, as I started looking at the psychology of religion, really, I began to realise that for most people, religion isn't really a belief as such, in terms of it seems to come from a participation with the world. So an example would be, if you go to a party and you come away saying that was a really great party, you don't do that because you go in with a clipboard and sit there kind of, making notes and making observations and measurements. You go because you get involved, you meet people, and then you walk away and you kind of decide afterwards. And I kind of found that most people, in terms of their belief in God, in terms of what some people would call their relationship with God, that's how they do it. They participate. And so I basically just wanted to write a book that was for anyone, really sympathetic, anybody could read it, and make up their own mind about it. And so it set these kind of series of spiritual experiments or spiritual exercises that people could just do and have a shot and make up their own mind. That's the idea. 10
years in the making then. I mean, how did you do this research?
So for me, it's a combination of different things. So I am a believer myself, if you like. So I was actually reading the Bible and meditating on it and kind of writing down ideas and reading some theology and some philosophy. I'm a trained psychotherapist and clinical psychologist. So I was then listening to my clients in a situation where I couldn't mention religion. So I don't talk about my own faith with my clients. And hearing what they had to say about those kind of things, because quite often it came up. And then as well, I'm really interested in the psychology of religion, which is how psychologists look at why and how people believe and what kind of people do believe and what are the personalities that get involved in that kind of thing. So for me, it was kind of coming together of lots of different sources of things that generally speaking, I think not many people really put together. But I just happened to be in these different worlds travelling through them. So that's where it came from.
It's very, people's personal opinion about faith and the way they look at it is very different. And I've spoken to people very high up in the church here in Lincolnshire who said, I'm not religious, but I have a faith.
Sure.
And it's just, everybody's got a very, very different take on things.
Well, that's true. And I think the interesting thing for me is that while church attendance is going down, or has gone down over the last 100 years or so, spiritual experience as such seems to be going up. So about, the last survey I read, for example, about 3 out of every 4 people you asked on Lincoln High Street would say yes if you asked them a question like, have you had a prayer answered? Have you had a coincidence you can't explain? Have you sensed the presence of God? Have you felt a unity in nature? And so lots of people now, we find, would put themselves in a category of saying, I'm spiritual, but I'm not religious. And in a sense, my book was kind of pitching into that, really, in terms of saying, well, actually, for me, following Jesus or being a disciple of Jesus hasn't really been about a religious structure. I do go to church, but it's actually been about some kind of experience and some kind of lifestyle I followed. It's a journey, really.
And I suppose there are different times when people might decide, I've got a faith. There might be something happens, a bereavement in the family.
That's right,
so did you look into areas of that as well, when people do call on faith more than other times?
Sure, and that's actually the area where that kind of got me into it originally, because my specialism as a clinical psychologist is trauma, so psychological trauma, and what I began to notice was that lots of people after trauma seem to use it as an opportunity to change their life on some level. And sometimes that's spiritually, but quite often it's like I feel more loving towards my family and my kids. Sometimes it's I've changed my philosophy in some way. I feel wiser. I feel stronger. And so that kind of what we call post-traumatic growth really fascinated me, and that's kind of woven into the book, although I don't mention it a lot. The kind of idea of, sometimes things happen in life that really challenge us is part and parcel of what I'm writing about. Really.
So how you've gathered all this information, how do you sort of put it into some sort of a semblance, some sort of order? How have you dealt with the chapters in the book?
Yeah, so the first surprise that seems to strike people when they read the book is that it's not an academic book. So the book is like an extended piece of poetry or prose. It's really me doing a lot of reflecting. There's a lot of personal stories in it. But I chose to hang the experiments on the kind of the 8 statements of that Jesus makes at the beginning of his first public sermon, and they're quite well-known statements. So it's kind of, blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. But I felt they were statements that have become a little bit meaningless in modern language, really. And so what I wanted to do was just update them a little bit and say, could we make these statements doable in some way, tryable? So you could say, okay, so what does it mean to be pure in heart? If I tried being pure in heart, would I see God? Whatever that means. So it's kind of like that's the angle of it. So the book's structured around those 8 statements, and those are the 8 experiments in it.
Did you get any conclusions from doing this? Did you get any... Have you got the answers that you wanted, do you think?
Do you mean for myself or with other people?
Well, I suppose for yourself. I mean,
Yeah.
this is your project. This is what you've put your heart and soul into for 10 years.
Yeah.
Have you got out of it what you wanted to?
Well, the way I pitched the book to the publisher is that this could be the first of 7. So,
right, okay. There's more to come.
It's an ongoing project. But I think what's inherent in the book is the idea that faith is a journey. And therefore, I would say, as far as I've gone so far, I have got the answers I wanted. I've found a way of living the teaching of Jesus that really works for me and feels consistent across all the domains of life I'm in, whether it's family, workplace, academic research. So in that way, it has worked. And I think it's also worked in terms of it's a book now that I feel comfortable putting in anyone's hands, no matter what they believe or who they are, and feel that it's a friendly book. It's a gentle book. And in the end, it's not really saying, believe in Jesus or else. It's really saying, listen, this is what I believe. I've been struggling a little bit to articulate it. But, there you go. Let me know what you think.
You had the official book launch this last week, didn't you?
Yeah.
So have you had a chance to have feedback from others who've read it?
Yes, yeah, lots of chance. And generally speaking, the feedback is good. So I've had even people who kind of wouldn't call themselves Christians, which are many of my friends and colleagues. Some people have said things like, this is a lovely book, I really loved reading it, but I don't buy this Jesus nonsense, So it's kind of like, the feedback has been lovely and really encouraging. And so far, I haven't had as much negative... I thought I'd get more critical feedback than I've got. Maybe that's yet to come. But I've had some really, really lovely feedback of people who've engaged with the book, enjoyed reading it. And the final line of the book is, in the end, you can shake your head and walk away, but I hope we can still be friends. And I think it has landed that way with people, I think.
Great stuff. It'd be interesting to read and find out more about it. And if anybody has managed to get a copy yet, you can get them on Amazon.
Yes, so it's called the God Lab, 8 spiritual experiments you can try at home. And the cheapest place to get it at the moment is amazon.co.uk, which is even cheaper than I can sell it. I don't know how they do that. But
Excellent. Bargain hunting, here we go. Thank you ever so much for coming in, Roger, and telling us more about that. Fascinating stuff. Dr. Roger Bretherton, who has written the book that we've been talking about this morning. So if you do want more information about that, what I'll do, the God Lab is the name of the book. I'll leave the details with our reception desk here at BBC Lincolnshire, and then during the week, if you call the team on reception on 01522 511 411, they'll be able to tell you all about it. It is BBC Lincolnshire. It's 18 minutes past 8.